History is often written by the victors. And at number 10, we unravel the story of an elementary school teacher who walked off her remote property and into a nightmare. Her fate remained uncertain for nearly 40 years until one small, final piece of evidence was DNA identified in the modern era, forcing detectives to reopen a brutal, unsolved homicide case. Stay tuned, because the killer may have been someone she knew, a phantom moving undetected for generations. Number 10. K. Josephine Medin, The Horrifying Postscript. The date: reported missing 3 August 1987. The teacher, K. Josephine Medin, also reported as K. Adams, elementary school teacher. The location: Hyampalm, Trinity County, California. The status: partial remains found decades apart, case treated as an open homicide. The summer of 1987 was meant to be one of quiet reflection for K. Josephine Medin. A devoted elementary school teacher, Kay was an established figure in the rural, isolated community of Hyampalm in Trinity County, California. She lived a simple, quiet life dedicated to her students and her remote property. But the isolation that provided her peace also provided the perfect cloak for a crime. On August 3, 1987, Kay was reported missing. Initial police searches of her property and the surrounding heavily forested land yielded nothing. This was not a quick, sensational case. It was a slow, agonizing realization that a beloved community member had simply ceased to exist. In the vast, rough terrain of the Trinity Alps, disappearances often dissolve into the background noise of nature. But Kay Medin's vanishing act was different. It wasn't a case of getting lost. It became clear something far more sinister had occurred. The first horrifying discovery came years later. In the subsequent decades, human remains were found in the region, scattered by nature and time. These partial remains were too fragmented or degraded to be immediately identified, filing away into the grim backlog of unsolved John and Jane Does across California. For years, Kay's file remained active but stalled. The case languished, an open loop in the records of the Trinity County Sheriff's Office. The community knew she was gone, but the how and the why remained a spectral question. The identity of the killer was a ghost in the vast California woods. Then, technology brought a cold case back to life. In the 2020s, utilizing the power of modern forensic science, a major push was made to re-examine these cold cases. Small fragments of bone, previously stored as unidentified evidence, were subjected to the latest in DNA sequencing technology. In a stunning, agonizing moment of resolution for the family, one small fragment, a piece of a skull, was conclusively identified in 2025 as belonging to K. Josephine Medin. The identification of this single piece confirmed the worst. Kay Medin was a victim of homicide. The discovery fundamentally changed the nature of the investigation. What was once a missing person case was now definitively an open homicide. This tiny piece of skull represented the last known link to her fate, solidifying the idea that Kay had been murdered on or near her property in 1987. The Los Angeles Times, covering the case, highlighted the renewed urgency. Investigators now face the task of finding a suspect or solving a nearly 40-year-old crime, armed only with forensic evidence that has survived the elements for 4 decades. The trail is impossibly cold, yet the truth is now irrefutable. A monster walked among them, took a teacher's life, and walked away undetected. Kay Medin's skull fragment finally answered the question of her survival, but it simultaneously amplified the terror. Who killed her, and why? The search for that phantom killer is still active, an open wound in the California hills. It begs the question, how much longer can a secret be kept, especially when the killer knows that new technology could expose them at any moment? That answer awaits us, as the very same technological leap exposed a decades-old killer in the story of Christy Ann Mirack, a case we will revisit later in this countdown. But first, if you are drawn into these deep, chilling dives into unresolved history, please take a moment to subscribe and comment below which of these 10 unsolved cases you hope is closed next. Number 9. Deborah Jean Swanson, The Vanishing Act on Tubbs Hill. The date: last seen 29 March 1986. The teacher: Debbie Jean Swanson, special education teacher. The location: Tubbs Hill Trail, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The status: missing, suspected foul play, case remains unsolved. The beauty of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho often masks a deep, unforgiving wilderness. It's a place where the grandeur of the northwest landscape meets the placid surface of a massive lake. It was here, in 1986, that the peaceful routine of a special education teacher was swallowed whole. Debbie Jean Swanson, was 31 years old and deeply respected for her work with students facing learning challenges. She was an outdoors enthusiast, relying on the quiet trails near her home for exercise and reflection. On the afternoon of Saturday, March 29, 1986, Debbie told her family she was going for a walk. Her destination was Tubbs Hill, a prominent public park that juts out into Lake Coeur d'Alene, offering stunning views. It was a route she took often. She never returned. When Debbie failed to appear for work on Monday, the alarm was raised. An immediate, massive search was launched. The focus was Tubbs Hill. Hundreds of volunteers and law enforcement officers scoured the wooded paths, the dense brush, and the rocky shoreline of the lake. Helicopters flew overhead, and divers checked the frigid, deep waters of the lake. They found nothing. Not a dropped glove, a footprint, or a strand of clothing. It was as if she had simply stepped off the face of the earth. The complete lack of evidence instantly suggested a sinister scenario. Investigators quickly dismissed the idea that Debbie had gotten lost. Tubbs Hill is a popular, well-traveled area, and Debbie was an experienced walker. Foul play was suspected almost from the start. The mystery deepened as the investigation failed to produce any meaningful leads. There were no witnesses who saw her leave the trail, no signs of a struggle, and no indication of who might want to harm her. It was a clean, silent abduction, or murder, executed in the open air of a public park. Decades passed. Debbie Swanson's case became a fixture in the NamUs, National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, and DOE Network entries, the digital repositories of the nation's unsolved cases. Her file is a testament to the agony of the missing, suspected foul play status, a status that offers neither the closure of death nor the hope of life. The lingering questions about Debbie's disappearance are chilling. Was she targeted by someone she knew, who carefully planned the act in a location they knew she frequented? Or was she the victim of a random predator, someone who saw an opportunity on a quiet afternoon trail? The authorities, while having exhausted every lead, never closed the case. Every few years, new detectives cycle through the file, looking for a forgotten detail or a new technique to apply to the old facts. But the fact remains, a special education teacher walked onto a public trail in Idaho and vanished without a physical trace, her destiny sealed by an unknown assailant in daylight hours. Debbie Swanson's vanishing act showed that even in the most familiar public spaces, danger can operate with terrifying efficiency. This theme of a familiar commute ending in horror echoes the disappearance of another teacher, Tara Faye Grinstead, who went missing after a social event, a case that took over a decade and a strange confluence of events to find even partial answers. We will explore the complex resolution of the Grinstead case soon, but first we must journey to the Australian Gold Coast to examine a disappearance so bizarre it involves a possible identity theft, an international money trail, and a family's relentless, decades-long pursuit of their mother, Marion Barter. Number 8. Marion Barter, The Faceless Passport. The date: disappeared from Southport, Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia, 22 June 1997. The teacher: Marion Barter, school teacher. The location: Gold Coast, Queensland, Australia. The status: long, cold case. Coroner concluded she likely died. Investigation still active, led by the NSW Homicide Squad. The life of Marion Barter was one of quiet dedication. A primary school teacher and mother of two, she lived in the picturesque town of Southport on the Gold Coast of Queensland, Australia. By 1997, she was navigating the complexities of a recent divorce and seeking a fresh start. In June 1997, Marion sold her house, packed her bags, and told her family she was taking a year-long holiday, a trip to see Europe. It was an understandable, if sudden, desire for adventure. She was last seen on June 22, 1997, after dropping in on a friend. Initially, the lack of contact was attributed to her trip abroad, but as months
turned into silence, her daughter Sally became increasingly concerned. Marion was close with her children. A year of total radio silence was unthinkable. The story of Marion Barter's disappearance is unique and unsettling, hinging on two bizarre, verified facts that turned the missing person case into an active homicide investigation. Fact 1. The name change. Investigators confirmed that shortly before she left, Marion Barter legally changed her name. She did not change it back to her maiden name. She changed it to Florabella Natalia Marion Ramokas. It was a strange, dramatic change that defied explanation. Fact 2. The return and re-exit. Police records showed that a woman identifying as Florabella Ramokas returned to Australia from the United Kingdom on July 30, 1997, just weeks after leaving. The same woman, using the Florabella Ramokas passport, then left Australia again on the very next day, July 31, 1997, traveling back to an unknown destination in Europe. Marion Barter, or Florabella Ramokas, was never seen or heard from again. The critical question became, was the person who returned to Australia and then immediately left the real Marion Barter? The subsequent investigation revealed that all of Marion's money was withdrawn from her bank accounts shortly after her return and second departure. The withdrawals were carried out manually, but Marion had left her financial affairs in perfect order. The most probable and chilling theory is that the person who returned on July 30th was not Marion, but someone using her new identity and passport to empty her accounts before vanishing. This theory implies a sinister level of premeditation and control. It suggests Marion was intercepted, potentially murdered, and had her identity and financial assets stolen by someone who knew her plans and exploited her desire for a fresh start. The name Florabella Ramokas became the ghost's identity, a final, faceless postscript to her life. The cold case eventually gained immense public attention, fueled by investigative reporting and podcasts, leading to a crucial coronial inquiry. The coroner concluded that Marion likely died, possibly by homicide, sometime soon after her disappearance. The complexity of the case, involving international travel and potential financial fraud, ultimately led the powerful NSW Homicide Squad to take over the investigation, a clear signal of the case's suspected severity. The question remains, who was the man or woman who orchestrated the Florabella Ramokas identity switch, and what did they do with the beloved teacher, Marion Barter? Number 7. Paige Marie Renkoski, the abandoned freeway car. The date: reported missing 24 May 1990. The teacher: Paige Marie Renkoski, substitute school teacher. The location: I-96 near Lansing, Michigan. The status: long-running cold case, vehicle abandoned, presumed abducted, unsolved. The Midwestern highways, particularly the I-96 corridor in Michigan, are the arteries of American commerce and travel. But on a spring afternoon in 1990, a section of that highway became the final unsolved scene for a substitute teacher named Paige Marie Renkoski. Paige was 21 years old, a recent graduate, and working as a substitute teacher in the Detroit area. On the evening of May 24, 1990, she was driving from her family's home in Lansing back toward a friend's home in the Detroit suburbs. It was a routine she knew well. Sometime between 4 p.m. and 5 p.m., something caused Paige to stop her car on the shoulder of I-96, just west of the Fowlerville exit. The only remaining evidence of Paige Renkoski's life was found by police. Her car, a gray 1986 Oldsmobile Cutlass, was parked on the side of the road. Inside, the engine was off, the keys were either in the ignition or nearby, and her purse, with money and identification, was inside. The driver's side door was reportedly unlocked. The scene was eerily quiet and entirely devoid of explanation. Why would a young woman, on a familiar drive, abandon her running vehicle and all her belongings on a busy interstate? The early investigation focused on a few tantalizing but ultimately inconclusive witness accounts. A man in a light-colored pickup truck was seen talking to a woman matching Paige's description near her vehicle. Another witness reported seeing a man standing near her car, leaning into the open driver's side door. These accounts solidified the idea of a targeted abduction or a random predator stopping to offer help, which turned into a fatal attack. The case instantly went cold. Investigators scoured the area, checked local sex offenders, and followed up on every reported sighting, but Paige Marie Renkoski had vanished into the stream of traffic, leaving only her car behind. The presumption of the police and the FBI was simple. She was abducted and likely murdered. The killer was efficient, taking advantage of a momentary vulnerability on the highway and successfully spiriting her away from a highly visible location without a single definitive witness stepping forward. Paige's story represents the nightmare scenario for commuters, the quick, clean crime committed against someone who stopped to help a stranded motorist or who herself needed aid. The highway, meant to be a connector, became the scene of her permanent separation from the world. To this day, the site of her abandoned car is the last known fact in her life. The cold case remains a high priority for Michigan law enforcement, an open file that represents one of the most visible and baffling disappearances in the state's history. The efficiency of Paige Renkoski's disappearance suggests a calculating predator who knew how to exploit the anonymity of the highway. It is a terrifying parallel to the disappearance of Tara Faye Grinstead, where the small-town community was shocked to learn one of their own was responsible for a similar, opportunistic crime years later. We will explore the complexity of the Grinstead case and its partial resolution later. But first, like this video and subscribe to help us bring these gripping, vital stories to more people who care about finding justice for the vanished. Number 6. Sister Catherine Cesnik, the saintly victim and sinister allegations. The date: vanished in November 1969. Found murdered January 3, 1970. The teacher: Sister Catherine Cesnik, nun and high school teacher. The location: Baltimore, Maryland. The status: high-profile cold case with allegations linked to historic abuse. Remains officially unsolved. No one convicted for the murder. The year 1969 was a time of cultural upheaval, but within the walls of the Archbishop Keough High School in Baltimore, the rhythm of Catholic education remained constant. Guiding students in English and drama was Sister Catherine Cesnik, a beloved 26-year-old nun. Sister Cathy's life was tragically intersected by a dark secret that festered beneath the surface of the school she taught at. On November 7, 1969, Sister Cathy left her apartment to go shopping for an engagement gift. She was sharing a place with another nun, Sister Helen Phillips, which was a modern arrangement for the time. She never returned home. Her car, a green Ford, was found 2 days later, double-parked near her apartment. The police search was launched, but it yielded no immediate clues. The mystery deepened nearly 2 months later, on January 3, 1970. Sister Cathy's body was discovered by a hunter in a remote, trash-strewn field outside Baltimore. She had been brutally murdered, but the cause of death was ruled a massive blow to the head, not the stabbing or shooting often associated with violent crime. The murder of a nun in Baltimore shocked the nation, but the police investigation quickly stalled. The case remained open, but seemingly unsolvable for decades. It wasn't until the 1990s that the entire complexion of the case changed, moving from a simple murder mystery to a profound commentary on institutional betrayal. In the 1990s, former students of Archbishop Keough High School began coming forward with horrifying allegations. They claimed that the school's chaplain, Father Joseph Maskell, had been sexually abusing students for years. Crucially, one former student, known as Jane Doe, alleged that she had told Sister ChRThe about the abuse. She further claimed that Sister ChRThe intended to expose Maskell and the network of abuse she suspected at the school. Another former student claimed that Maskell had even taken her to see Sister ChRThe's body shortly after the murder, a terrifying act of intimidation. These allegations created a powerful new but legally complex theory for Sister ChRThe's murder. She wasn't killed randomly, but was silenced. She was the teacher who knew too much. Investigators spent years trying to find physical evidence to link Maskell or others to the murder, but the evidence was too old, and Maskell consistently denied the accusations until his death in 2001. Though DNA evidence from the crime scene has been re-examined, it has never provided a definitive match to
a living suspect. The case gained widespread attention after the release of the Netflix documentary The Keepers. Despite renewed public pressure and the tireless work of former students, no one has ever been charged or convicted in the murder of Sister Catherine Cesnik. Her death remains officially unsolved, but the dark allegations surrounding it have indelibly linked her murder to a wider story of institutional failure and the ultimate price paid by a teacher who tried to protect her students. Sister ChRThe's death shows the profound danger faced by those who tried to expose systemic evil. But sometimes, the victim is not silenced for exposing abuse, but for having her fate sealed by the sheer random violence of a killer who operates in the quiet of the night. Next, we journey to the outskirts of Sacramento to examine the sudden, violent death of Cherilyn Hawkley, a mystery that has been waiting over 30 years for a definitive DNA match to expose her killer. Number 5. Cherilyn Hawkley, the Car Park Nightmare. The date? Found dead on 30 October 1993. Last seen October 29, 1993. The teacher, Cherilyn Hawkley, elementary school teacher. The location, near Granite Bay, California. The status, homicide, cold case. Case has been re-examined with new DNA technology. Still unsolved. Cherilyn Hawkley was an elementary school teacher dedicated to her job in Citrus Heights, California. In the fall of 1993, she was 39 years old, living a routine life in the Sacramento suburbs. On the night of October 29, 1993, that routine was shattered. Cherilyn was out for a social evening, likely in the area of Folsom, California. The following morning, October 30th, her body was discovered. She was found inside her own vehicle, which was parked in a remote forested area near Granite Bay, not far from Folsom Lake. Investigators quickly determined that she had been brutally murdered, confirming the worst fears of her family and the community. The initial investigation into Cherilyn's homicide was extensive but frustrating. The physical evidence pointed toward a clear act of violence, but establishing a reliable timeline, identifying a suspect, and linking the crime to a motive proved impossible. Was she abducted from a public place and driven to the remote location? Did she know her assailant? The questions mounted, but the leads withered. The murder became a chilling cold case that haunted the quiet communities east of Sacramento for decades.
In the 2010s and 2020s, a new hope emerged, spurred by the technological leap that had provided a partial answer in the Medin case and complete resolution in the Christy Ann Mirack case. The Placer County Sheriff's Office announced that they were actively re-examining the Cherilyn Hawkley file, specifically focusing on physical evidence collected from the scene that contained DNA. Advances in forensic genealogy and DNA technology offered the chance to build a profile of the killer. CBS News, reporting on the renewed investigation, highlighted the meticulous work being done. Detectives were now using every tool available to take decades-old evidence and force it to yield a 21st-century answer. The DNA was there. The technology to identify the individual was finally available. As of the latest reports, while the DNA profile has been developed, a definitive identification leading to an arrest has not been announced. This means Cherilyn Hawkley's killer knows that the genetic ghost they left behind in 1993 is now fully visible to modern science, waiting for the right genealogical match to expose them. Her case remains a stark example of a crime that survived multiple decades of dormancy, now sitting on the brink of resolution, dependent only on the right piece of forensic data to fall into place. Number 3. Ellen Rae Greenberg, The Disputed Death. The date: died in Philadelphia on 26 January 2011. The teacher: Ellen Rae Greenberg, first-grade teacher. The location: Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The status: manner of death has been fiercely disputed and reinvestigated. Case remains contested and under renewed scrutiny. Legally sensitive. The death of Ellen Rae Greenberg is not a story of a teacher who vanished. It is the story of a teacher's death certificate that became the center of a decade-long legal and scientific battle. Ellen was a 27-year-old first-grade teacher in Philadelphia, engaged to a local lawyer. On January 26, 2011, she was discovered deceased in the apartment she shared with her fiancé. The initial scene was horrifying. Ellen was discovered with multiple stab wounds to her neck and torso, 20 distinct wounds in total. The wounds were deep and extensive. The shocking part of the case is the way the death was officially classified. Despite the 20 stab wounds, the apartment door being locked from the inside, and the presence of a knife, the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office initially ruled the death a suicide. This ruling instantly sparked massive controversy. Experts and the victim's family argued that the nature and location of the wounds were entirely inconsistent with self-infliction. The family hired independent forensic pathologists and experts who unanimously concluded the death should have been ruled a homicide. Their argument centered on defensive wounds, the presence of marks indicating a struggle; stab locations, the inability for a person to inflict that many deep, forceful wounds in certain areas on themselves; the locked door, the mechanics of how the knife and the body were found in relation to the locking mechanism. The family launched a relentless, high-profile legal battle against the official ruling, demanding the case be changed to homicide and fully investigated. The case has seen multiple legal twists. Due to the family's pressure and independent evidence, the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office eventually changed the manner of death from suicide to undetermined. But undetermined is not homicide. The legal status of the case remains in limbo, fueling the family's conviction that the initial scene was not adequately processed as a potential crime scene. The family's ongoing lawsuit and push for a definitive homicide ruling has led to renewed scrutiny from state and local authorities. Ellen Greenberg's case stands as a terrifying example of how even clear, violent evidence can be misinterpreted or misclassified, leaving a cloud of suspicion and legal ambiguity where there should be definitive answers. The official record of her death is highly sensitive, and no individual has ever been charged. Her legacy is not just her teaching career, but the ongoing, painful legal fight to determine whether she took her own life or was, in fact, murdered inside her locked apartment. The tragic ambiguity surrounding Ellen Greenberg's death, whether it was a suicide or a secret homicide, highlights the agonizing reality of complex investigations. This level of complexity is sometimes needed to unlock a decades-old crime, as we saw in the case of Lynette Dawson, a disappearance that took 40 years of tireless advocacy and investigation to finally result in a conviction. Next, we travel to Sydney's northern beaches to look at the tragic disappearance of Lynette Dawson, a story that became a landmark cold case conviction and a testament to the power of public memory. Number 2. Tara Faye Grinstead, the Beauty Queen and the Betrayal. The date: reported missing 24 October 2005. The teacher: Tara Faye Grinstead, high school history teacher. The location: Ocilla, Georgia. The status: high-profile cold case that later produced arrests, 2017. Tara Faye Grinstead was more than just a history teacher at Irwin County High School. She was a former beauty queen and a vibrant, well-loved fixture in the small, tight-knit community of Ocilla, Georgia. On Saturday, October 22nd, Tara went to a beauty pageant, the one place she always felt at home, and later attended a barbecue at a friend's house. She was dropped off at her own home late that night. When she failed to show up for work on Monday, October 24th, a missing person report was filed. The scene at her house was immediately alarming. Her car was in the driveway, the front door was locked, but her cell phone, purse, and keys were missing. Crucially, her 2 dogs were locked inside, and her bedside lamp was broken. It was a scene that suggested a struggle and a sudden, violent confrontation. The disappearance of the popular teacher rocked the town. The ensuing decade saw one of the most extensive missing persons searches in Georgia history. Leads went cold, rewards grew, and the case became the subject of national true crime attention. Then, after 11 years of silence, the dam broke. In February 2000, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI, announced a shocking development. A tip had come in, leading to the arrest of Ryan Duke, a former student at the high school where Tara taught. Duke was charged with murder, aggravated assault, and concealing the death of another. A month later, a second man, Bo Dukes, unrelated to Ryan Duke, was arrested and charged with concealing a death, hindering apprehension, and tampering with evidence. The alleged story that unfolded was one of betrayal and opportunism. Investigators allege that Ryan Duke, after leaving a friend's house, entered Tara Grinstead's home and murdered her, later enlisting Bo Dukes to help dispose of the body, which was allegedly burned in a pecan orchard. The legal outcomes were complex, and for the community, unsatisfactory. Bo Dukes was convicted in 2019 for the charges related to concealing the death and was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He confessed to helping burn the body. Ryan Duke, facing the murder charge, went to trial in 2022. The jury, faced with inconsistent testimony and lack of definitive evidence regarding the exact murder, found him not guilty of malice murder and felony murder, but guilty of concealing the death, hindering a person from discovering a death, and burglary. The trial revealed the difficulty in prosecuting a murder case without a body, and the complexities of relying on testimony from individuals involved in the concealment of the crime. Tara Grinstead's family finally learned the fate of their daughter. But the legal system delivered an outcome that many found incomplete. The popular history teacher's disappearance serves as a dark lesson on the hidden crimes that fester beneath the surface of seemingly peaceful small-town life. Number 1. Christy Ann Mirack, the DNA ghost. The date: murdered 1992. The teacher: Christy Ann Mirack, elementary school teacher. The location: Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. The status: cold case solved years later via DNA/genetic genealogy. Suspect pleaded guilty. The ultimate contrast: solved by science. The morning of December 21, 1992 was supposed to be a normal school day for Christy Ann Mirack. The 25-year-old elementary school teacher was set to host a Christmas party for her 5th grade class in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. When she didn't show up for the party, their family went to her apartment to check on her. The scene they found was one of devastating violence. Christy Ann Mirack had been brutally murdered inside her home. The crime was shocking in its severity and lack of obvious motive. The killer had left no witnesses, no apparent forced entry, and no immediate trail. The case instantly went cold. Investigators processed the scene and collected physical evidence, including biological material left by the killer. But in the early 1990s, DNA technology was still rudimentary, and there were no comprehensive databases to match the profile. The evidence was shelved, and the case became a chilling file in the Lancaster County District Attorney's Office for 26 years. The community tried to heal, but the fear that a violent killer walked free in their midst never fully subsided. The killer was a ghost, protected by the limitations of the 20th century forensics. Then came the technological revolution that would solve the case. The same technology that gave a partial answer in the Medin case and continues to hunt for Cherilyn Hawkley's killer. In 2018, the District Attorney's Office utilized a new method: forensic genetic genealogy. Investigators took the killer's preserved DNA profile and uploaded it to a public genealogy database, similar to Ancestry or 23andMe, with a public crime profile. This technique allowed them to find distant relatives of the suspect who had voluntarily submitted their DNA to the database. Using this information, detectives painstakingly built a family tree, narrowing the suspect pool down to one man: Raymond Rowe. Rowe was 49, a popular local DJ known as DJ Freeze, who had lived in the Lancaster area at the time of the murder. He had never been a suspect, nor had he been questioned in the original investigation. In a dramatic move, investigators surreptitiously obtained a sample of Rowe's DNA from a water bottle he discarded after a catering event at a school. The sample was a perfect, definitive match to the DNA collected at Christy Ann Mirack's apartment in 1992. Raymond Rowe was arrested in June 2018. Faced with irrefutable DNA evidence, Raymond Rowe pled guilty to the murder of Christy Ann Mirack in January 2019, bringing to a close one of Pennsylvania's most notorious cold cases. He was sentenced to life in prison. The resolution of Christy Ann Mirack's case provides the only true closure in this countdown of teacher tragedies. It serves as a powerful warning to every cold case killer. No matter how old the crime, the smallest piece of DNA can now link the present to the past, forcing a final, undeniable reckoning. The lessons of the vanishing point. The stories of these 10 teachers, from Marion Barter's stolen identity to Sister Cathy's dangerous knowledge, are not just cold cases. They are monuments to the relentless pursuit of justice. We have seen how a simple walk in the park can end in eternal silence, as it did for Deborah Swanson. We have witnessed the enduring, decades-long pain of a crime committed in the anonymity of the highway, exemplified by Paige Renkoski. We have watched forensic science crawl toward the truth, offering partial answers for Kay Medin and a complete resolution for Christy Ann Mirack. What unites these stories is the vulnerability of the dedicated, the trusting, and the routine. These teachers were taken from us, not because they were involved in secret schemes or nefarious dealings, but because they were accessible, kind, and exposed to the same dangers that lurk just beneath the surface of ordinary life. The final lesson is not of fear, but of enduring hope. Technology and the relentless dedication of cold case detectives and advocating families are turning the pages on these cold, silent files. The ghosts of the past are now vulnerable to the science of the future. The secrets these killers thought they took to the grave are being shouted from the rooftops of genealogy databases. If you found the detailed research and storytelling in this documentary compelling, and if you believe that justice should have no expiration date, please comment below with the name of the teacher whose story you found the most haunting. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel to join us as we continue to shine a light on the darkest corners of history's unsolved mysteries.